Hello everyone. In the previous videos, we have discussed about few common web attacks like SQL injection, cross-site scripting, and file inclusion. Now this section will talk about the post-exploitation activities. So in this section, we'll discuss about the post-exploitation on Windows and post-exploitation on Linux. So this video is about the post-exploitation on Windows. In this video, we'll discuss about local privilege escalation on Windows machine. Now what exactly we mean by local privilege escalation? So we have gotten low privilege meterpreter session on a Windows machine. So if you go back to the courses where we have learned about how to use Metasploit to hack a Windows machine, then we know that using various exploits we can get a meterpreter session on a Windows machine. But whenever we do so, the meterpreter session that we get is a low privilege session. Now the next thing we would try is to get the system so as to escalate our privileges, but in most of the cases this command may fail. So what would be the next thing we can do to escalate our privilege? This is what we'll see in this video. So let's quickly move to our Kali machine. This is the MSF console or the Metasploit console. Now first we'll try to get a meterpreter session on the victim's machine which is running Windows, and then we'll see what exactly happens when you try to get the system or to escalate the privilege. Okay, so we first load the exploit, then we check the options. It needs the SRV host, and this should be the IP address of a local machine. Now if I don't remember the IP address, I can just quickly check the same. So that's the IP address. Let's set the payload. So we'll use the meterpreter payload for this exploit. Now let's check the options once again, and we can see we need to provide the L host also. So set. Now once we are done with all the options, we will run the exploit. Okay, so we can see that the exploit has been executed. We just need to now get the victim to access the URL of the attacker's machine. Now let's move on to the victim machine. So now on the victim machine, so as soon as the victim will visit the mentioned link, it will start loading some files. You just need to click on allow, and you can see that on the attacker's machine the meterpreter session has been opened. So the exploit has worked. Now if we check the sessions, we can see the meterpreter session is running. Now let's move on to this session. Now once we are into the meterpreter session, we would cross check the UID in which we have been logged in. So if we run the command get UID, we can see that we are on the victim machine in this particular user account. Now if this user account is not an admin account, then obviously we are restricted with what we can do on the victim machine. So the next thing we try to do is get into the admin account or to have the privilege escalations, but we can see that it has been denied. The privilege escalation of get system command failed. Now here we'll try to use some other exploit to get our work done. Now we'll first background the session, come back to Metasploit framework. Now we shall use some other exploit. Okay, so we'll be using this particular exploit, which is a local privilege escalation exploit. Select the exploit. Now check the options, and we can see that it needs the session to which we want to bind the exploit. That means the session of meterpreter which we have already achieved till here, this particular session. So the session ID needs to be mentioned so that this exploit can be binded to that particular session. And we also need to define the target. So we'll set the target 0 and set session as 1. Also set the payload as the meterpreter, even though we had selected that earlier, but just to make sure that we are on the right page, set the payload also. And we again check the options, so we need to mention the L host. Okay, it's good that we cross-checked because we can see that I did a typing mistake in session and it was not set properly. So set session as 1, set L host as the IP address. So now once we are done with all the options, we are good to go and we are able to run the exploit. Okay, we had executed the previous exploit on the same port, so it's better to change the port over here. So I'll type set L host as some other port, and then we will run the exploit. Okay, now you can see it is working. Exploit completed. No, the exploit did not work properly. So I've just cross-checked the settings and I've set the lhost as the local IP and lhost as 4445. I already set the session as 1 and the target as Windows x86 machine. Now let's try to run the exploit once again and hopefully this should be working fine now. As you can see, it says meterpreter session 2 was open. Get the UID. I can see that this time I'm running with the system account. So as soon as I try to get the system, I have got it and now I can run the commands as a system account. The exploit has worked for me and my privilege has been escalated on the remote machine. So you can see that how we can use one exploit after the other after getting into the remote machine to gain privileges on the remote machine. Now this has to be done if you want to have full control on the victim's machine once you have exploited the same using some metasploit exploits.